Welcome to Post Games, a podcast about how and why we love video games. I am your host, Chris Plant, and I am so happy to have you here as I celebrate one of my favorite secular holidays, Arbor Day. Arbor Day is Friday, April 24th in the United States, so odds are that you're actually hearing this after the day has passed, but do not fret. Arbor Day is celebrated around the world across many different days and seasons. In the Central African Republic, National Tree Planting Day is July 22nd. In Colombia, it's April 29th. The Day of the Tree is observed every year on June 21st in Cuba, and in Egypt, the year opens with Arbor Day on January 15th. Arbor Day's mission is elegant. It is simply a day in which everyone is encouraged to plant trees. Now, I totally understand that some folks may find this to be a modest act in the face of climate collapse, and yet, I value its capacity to make individual acts, planting trees, into a sort of shared global consciousness. We're all coming together to heal our planet. Now, planting a tree, it won't save us from climate change. I know that, you know that. Nor will the most well-participated Arbor Day in history. And yet, it is as vital a piece as any other in the elaborate puzzle that we're all trying to solve to provide our children and the kids of our family and friends a sustainable planet. But this is a video game podcast. How am I marking Arbor Day here? I'm so glad you asked. I want to plant a little tree in your mind. The Pan-European studio blends video games, theater, and experimental art to get people thinking, and perhaps more importantly, feeling big things about climate change. They practice what they preach, as you will hear in our conversation when creative producer Maria Cârstian details the fight to protect a local park from corporate-backed arson. But they, too, know the limits of any one protest, any one holiday, any one tree, and yes, any one video game. Their latest project, Mini Golf, is, despite what its playful title suggests, a game about climate collapse. And while they care deeply about this project, they realistically don't expect it to solve the problems that could end the world. Usually I don't pull right from the interviews, but I think it's helpful. This is creative director Friedrich Kirschner putting their ambitions in perspective.
The one thing that we really didn't want to do is have this sort of solutionist design thing, which I don't want to throw shade on anybody who's trying to find solutions for climate change. That's really cool. It's just not the thing that we wanted to do. We didn't want you to clean up things and then everything's fine, or rebuild things and then everything's cool, or do the solar punk thing where suddenly you have flying windmills and there's only 5 people on Earth and then everything's going to be fine. And I think one of the key pillars in everything that we wanted to do at the studio was, can we do this without imagining an enormous genocide?
Or as creative producer Maria Cârstian says, concisely,
the video game and art in itself can solve anything, but we can raise some awareness and we can make people feel things. And sometimes maybe that's enough.
Arbor Day ultimately is just an idea. Today, tomorrow, or this weekend, I encourage you to plant a tree, not metaphorically, literally. If you're not sure how to go about it, the Arbor Day Foundation, linked in the show notes, will gladly provide you not just instructions, but a sapling. Whatever it takes, get yourself on the dirt. Lower some life into the planet and feel it. The touch, the smell, the indescribable sense of not saving the planet, but changing it just a little bit for the better. This week, on Post Games, we plant a tree together. I chat with Friedrich Kirschner and Maria Cârstian about Mini Golf, a game that begins as light-hearted mini golf and evolves into a narrative adventure set in a world in which we don't prevent climate collapse, and instead, we must learn to live with it. Act 1, a mini golf game at the not-quite end of the world. Act 2, making fun games about big problems. A Patreon bonus, how to stay optimistic, and Act 3, as always, the news of the week. This episode will not change the world, but I hope it sparks something in you. Hey, quick heads up, I am finalizing this episode late Thursday night because I was in New York traveling. The point of the story is, this is a full episode, but there is no news of the week. It's still a great episode. This is such a cool interview. I was actually just talking about it with people at NYU after the chat. I don't want to hold you up anymore. I'll catch you on the flip side. As a video game journalist who has been doxxed, I am constantly preaching the message of personal data hygiene. I think every person should be aware of how much their personal information, phone numbers, addresses, health information, and more is available for other people to find on the internet, and that those private details are being sold without your consent by data brokers and can be used for scams, harassment, and other illegal activity. The problem is so widespread, you could lose entire days to finding who has your info, requesting that they remove it, and keeping these bad parties accountable. That is why I recommend Incogni. The moment you subscribe and authorize removal, Incogni begins searching data brokers, online directories, people databases, and commercial databases. When I signed up, over 200 removal requests were sent instantly. Within 30 minutes, 60 requests had been completed. That is not just a number. I could literally look to see the data brokers that have been contacted on my behalf and begun the data removal process. Incogni's work doesn't end there. It keeps checking back in with the data brokers because with new personal data hacks, your info can begin to crop up in some of those old, gnarly places. After going independent as a journalist, I began searching for the right data personal removal service for me. Incogni is exactly what I was looking for and has already brought me tremendous peace of mind. I think it could do the same for you. To get an exclusive 60% off an annual Incogni plan, go to incogni.com/postgames or click the link in the episode description box. That's incogni.com/postgames. In this time of year, it always makes me rethink what's in my closet. I'm trying to keep fewer things but better ones, pieces that are well made and easy to wear all the time, and that is why I keep coming back to Quince. The fabrics feel elevated, the fits are thoughtful, and the pricing actually makes sense. Quince makes high-quality, everyday essentials using premium materials like 100% European linen and their ridiculously soft flow-knit activewear fabric. Their men's linen pants and shirts are lightweight, breathable, and comfortable, basically the perfect layer for spring. And the pants, they strike the right balance between laid-back and refined, so you look put together without trying too hard. The very best part is that their prices are 50 to 60% less than similar brands. How do they do it? Quince works directly with ethical factories and cuts out the middlemen, so you're paying for quality, not brand markup. Everything is designed to last and make getting dressed easy. Let me tell you, I am enjoying it. The European linen relaxed short sleeve shirt, that is my thing. I love being able to put something on for a nice evening out if I'm going to dinner or the movies with my wife. Listen, I'm a gamer. I'm not used to trying to impress people, and it's nice to look nice. And it's even nicer to do it and not feel like I'm spending all of my money. If you are looking to do that too, you can refresh your wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/postgames for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/postgames. Act 1. A mini golf game at the not quite end of the world. Today's guests are Friedrich Kirschner and Maria Cârstian. Friedrich Kirschner is the founder and creative director at 3 More Years, a relatively young international video game studio that produces games that grapple with the realities of life in the age of climate change. Previously, he served as the founder and head of studies for the MA program on Objects and Play at the Ernst Busch University of Theater Arts, Berlin. Maria Cârstian is the creative producer of 3 More Years and has helped to develop the narrative vision for the studio's projects. Alongside her work in video games, Cârstian is a culture journalist, an education coordinator, and a poet. The two have joined me to talk about Mini Golf Golf. I am smitten with the game's Steam summary, so I'll just share that. Mini Golf Golf is an indie storytelling experience that goes beyond the lanes of the here and now into distant memories of a future planetary collapse. Destabilize the present and plunge into a neon psychohistory of a bizarre entity in distress. This is not a game about mini golf. The game is divided into 3 parts, and I will say one of them is mini golf. Another is a futuristic climate collapse, and perhaps most peculiarly, and not mentioned in that description, are the educational videos on how to read and appreciate games critically. Or to put it another way, they made a game that requires some real video game literacy, so they provided the lessons. What follows is a sprawling conversation about the powers and limitations of video games, the struggle to make things that matter, and the perpetual effort required to keep our hope kindled. Mini Golf Golf looks and sounds like a mini golf game. If it were just that, it would be really strange for me to have you two as guests on an episode about climate change. So what is Mini Golf Golf actually about?
It's a complex answer to give. For me, it's a very personal answer I can give on one hand, because working on Mini Golf Golf has this all like climate change and climate collapse layers to them, right? But then that reflected a bit of my life in like activism or protest organizing at the time, because right next to me, there's like a park that was being set on fire every other 2 days, basically. And that was it was a park where we all grew up and, learned how to walk and went on dates and all these things. And it was really painful to like witness all of that. And I think there was a lot of pain and turmoil happening, but also, I don't know, some hope maybe in community organizing and managing to bring everyone together and organizing these protests and artivism and performances and things we had going on at the time. And I feel this is something that attracted me to Mini Golf Golf, even though I wasn't consciously aware of it at the time. So I can say from my own very personal perspective that Mini Golf Golf is about all these feelings kind of interwoven.
You said the park was on fire. Do you mean quite literally? People are setting it on fire? What was happening?
Yes, although we do live in Europe, the real estate mafia is a real thing in Romania,
Wow.
where I am from. And this is something that they were doing every other day, basically.
I used to live in New York. In the building next to us, a person tried to bomb to demolish it so they could build another bigger building. So sadly, it's a global affair here. Okay, so that is a really good explanation of the kind of heart that's going into it. In the more literal sense, when you are playing the golf, what does the golf give way to?
So Mini Golf Golf is a game about the complexity of trying to figure out what it's like to not have managed to do climate change, but still have to kind of regulate how you feel about everything. And so what you do is you play video games. Video games help you regulate how you feel. They help you channel some of your emotions. Sometimes it's anger, sometimes it's hope, sometimes it's just chillness or vibes. And we tried to make a game specifically about this idea of, okay, there's stuff that we didn't manage to do. I'm not in my 30s anymore. I'm in my mid 40s. I feel like I can say that there's stuff that I would have loved to have had happen differently in the world, specifically when it comes to climate change. And then there are ways in which I'm trying to figure out how can I get some agency back in in the way that I go through life, because some things are my fault, some things are not my fault. And that's a very, as Maria has said, it's a very complex feeling, but I feel like video games very often, at least in my life, very often play a big part in managing these complex feelings. And mini golf is a game that I played as a child that I still like to play today. And it's basically the nucleus from which we, in the game, start to develop this story about personal loss and why are you sacrificing yourself to do something about climate change? Is it a sacrifice? Should you do it? Is it too much? But also a little bit of East German megalomania and trying to fix things by building enormous structures that rip open the planetary crust.
As if this wasn't enough, we have a game that presents superficially as mini golf. We have a game set in the distant future in which you are an employee for a massive organization trying to literally reshape the Earth because it's somewhat too late. And now you're having to take very extreme measures against climate collapse. And then we have one more thing, which is an educational TV series, which teaches viewers about the many ways that video games can be used as tools for exploration, for education, for personal growth. And these videos, I will say, serve a subtle function and a key function within the gameplay. But they are not about climate collapse. They are about the power of video games. So why was it important for y'all to include these alongside this other thing?
I'm very happy to answer that question there. As often, it's a mix of different things. First of all, the people that you see in the videos, they're all working in theater. So it was something that was a very direct way for us to do something. We're all writing dramatic. Dramatic sounds maybe a bit much, but we're all writing for theater. We're all performing on stage in different roles. You know, it's like independent theater. It's not like Broadway stuff where I'm very good at one thing. It's like I'm also putting up little puppets and then trying to find the fader on the lights so that people don't look at us for too long. And it's that sort of mindset. And doing a talk show is something that fit really well just into the things that we could do. Like we were proficient enough to do that on a level that was high enough. And it was a very good basis to kind of set the stage, so to speak, for seeing video games as something that is more than just the game that you play in that moment. And it has to be about game feel, and it has to be giving you rewards and all of these things. But that video games are something that you make your own and that you can then put in a situation in your life. And I feel like that is kind of like the ground layer you need in order to start interacting with mini golf in the way that we were hoping that people would interact, and that the video game is just the stake that you throw over the fence to distract the watchdog of the mind so that we can go and rob the house.
Yeah, I love that. There is something so high degree of difficulty that I find about the whole project. Not for the player, really at all, but for what you're trying to accomplish. Because you're right, the video series that you have in here that is teaching people like, hey, do you know that a video game can give you the experimental tools to think about something that really scares you about the future, reminded me a lot of children's TV that I grew up watching. Shows like Bill Nye the Science Guy and Beakman's World. I have no idea if these were available in Germany, but it has that tenderness, a similar, we're bringing you in from the ground floor. And then you get into the mini golf, and that's a little more complicated. And then suddenly you are in the shoes of this depressed 30-year-old unionized worker in the future who is thinking about like a hard breakup and wishing that they had chatted with their father more. And it is an entire life of a video games experience condensed into one game. I guess what I'm asking is, one, how did you bring those together? And two, who is the audience that you're picturing? Are you picturing different audience for different phases? Do you have one person in mind?
I'm going to give that to Maria, because part of the reason we brought Maria on board was that we really needed somebody to tell us if what we're trying to do actually made sense and if it's actually working. And so maybe you can talk a little bit about what it was like for you to be presented with this thing.
That's really interesting. In terms of audiences, I think we imagined people like us in a broader sense, people who would be interested in different media coming together and overlapping, people who maybe come from theater or from cinema and who are looking for something different, who are coming maybe from arts or media arts, and who are interested into this kind of things. And bringing them together was difficult because we did want it to be weird, I think, and we did not want it to be maybe, as accessible as a AAA for sure. And we wanted to tell a story that had multiple entry points and that you could arrange basically as you went along to the final point. And I think that, yes,
sorry,
please help.
if I might go in. I think the word that Maria is searching for but not finding is poetry. And that part of the reason we brought Maria on is because she's an editor of, first of all, a comic book, but then also in a lot of different film festivals. And she's very proficient in poetry and poetry editing. And it became clear, as Maria has said, in the beginning, we didn't have the whole stack of things that was going on. We basically built it from the ground up, and we were always like, oh yeah, everybody will understand what we're doing. And then we showed it to people and they're like, I have no idea what you're doing. And it became clear that we needed more and more layers to get people to become attached to our characters. And the way we were then at some point starting to explore this was by the ball talking. And that was basically developed together with Maria, by Maria basically saying, I have no idea what you're doing. I need something to hold on to. And we then went from there. And that was a moment where I could try something, I could write some small text, and then Maria would be able to tell me that I still don't know what you're doing. Can you tell me more straight? And so that was an incredibly important person to have because, as Maria has said, we as artists, we don't necessarily think of this one other person that we're making this for. We basically hope that everybody will be able to engage with this in some way. And we also believe that people will make it theirs. And I don't know what people want, but I can tell you how I see the world. And then if you also resonate with that, which is also a word that Maria has brought into the discourse, then maybe there's something there. And I think having different people with very different viewpoints and a very diverse group of people looking at what we're trying to say enabled us to then start developing these different layers that we put into the game.
Yeah. I understand making a game in 2026 or 2025 or 2030, any of these years, about climate change and climate collapse. There's not a lot of other games to borrow from that you end up looking for other inspirations. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe Mini Golf draws inspiration from a book titled Bodies of Extraction Underneath the Ground of Islands. Maybe that influenced a VR game before this. And this is a book about the commodification of soil and caverns and tectonic plates beneath our feet. This book basically is impossible to find in the United States in English. I'd love to hear more about the text and what about it influenced you all in making this game.
So we have read a book, but I'm not 100% sure on the title, but it sounds exactly like the book that you're describing, that talks about Greece and mining in Greece. And,
yes.
and the change that the landscape undertook together with the change in the bodies of the people and the change in the social fabric of the people on that island. And that book does an amazing job of overlaying basically malleable nature and malleable human flesh. It's very visceral, but then also weaves in all of these wounds from capitalism and wounds from extractivism. And that was something that Leonie Voegelin brought into the team, who was the co-founder and then switched directions more towards theater and is now doing theater exclusively. But we were very familiar with, there's also a book that I think is called On Planetary Scale that was very influential in just trying to think of Earth or the planet, like how can we make something that is connecting a human person to the planet in a way that doesn't make it like overbearing. And the one thing that we really didn't want to do is have this sort of solutionist design thing, which I don't want to throw shade on anybody who's trying to find solutions for climate change. That's really cool. It's just not the thing that we wanted to do. We didn't want you to clean up things and then everything's fine, or rebuild things and then everything's cool, or do the solar punk thing where suddenly you have flying windmills and there's only 5 people on Earth and then everything's going to be fine. And I think one of the key pillars in everything that we wanted to do at the studio was, can we do this without imagining an enormous genocide? And that makes it a lot harder.
Yeah.
Because you can't do the clean slate apocalypse thing.
How do you begin to adapt these texts and these influences into a game? And I say this sincerely, and I'm not trying to it sounds reductive, but how do you read these books? You have these ideas, and then you say, we're going to start with a golf game, and then we're going to go from there.
It's really hard to answer this question without taking the magic away from the process, because sometimes you just have a golf game lying around because it's a thing that you were doing. But there's already something in that golf game because you didn't just make a golf game that would work really well in 2026 with modern audiences, but you made a golf game that really reverberated with you when you were 10. So there's this game called Zany Golf from the Amiga, which is an isometric golf game, and it has zany courses. And it has a windmill. And so that's the thing that you create. And then I'm a very, as Maria will probably attest to, a very image-based person. So I have images. I can see the skin of the earth open as a wound. And that is a thing that is very strong with me. That can be a level for a golf game. I don't see why not. I can imagine a giant hall where we carve tectonic plates, and it doesn't take very much for me to put a golf game underneath those plates and say, wherever the golf ball goes, that's how we carve the plates. But then in order for that to make that understandable, I need somebody to help me, to tell me what they understand, what they don't understand. And I need to write words, and I need somebody else to tell me if those words make any sense. And I need characters, and I'm not very good at creating characters. But Maria knows a lot about characters and a lot about how characters interact with each other.
A thing that I kept thinking about while playing the game was gig economy workers. And there is a character who is very human in the game who is working a job that feels very plug and play to the point that they can play mini golf during their workday. And there is this other force who, in a strange way that you're interacting with them, also feels like that relationship through a computer of am I even talking to a person? Am I talking to an AI? What is on the other side? And I don't know how intentional, what intentional or not almost doesn't matter, but for the game to be about climate collapse, it also felt like it was about this other problem that we are running into more and more, especially following the pandemic. Is a unionization, the gig economy, something that was floating around in the ether as you're pulling the story together?
Yeah, the world building very much tries to course correct for all of the horrible stuff that's going on right now. And when you're trying to do a European speculative world building thing, and Europe is a set of different states, and they're coming together, and then they're also growing apart again, and then coming together again. There's a lot of wonderful idealism, but then also the things that you have to do in order to combat catastrophe have to become larger and larger. So the thing that we have decided on for this game is that there's this mega project that's happening underneath the Baltic Ocean, and it's actually completely preposterous to think that we can reignite the Gulf Stream by just ripping open different plates and then figuring out plate tectonics and all of these sorts of things. And there's a lot of technical solutionism in there, and in order for that to make sense, you need to have a unitary guiding voice. So we have this European Union commissioner who is actually a socialist, and they are actually changing the economy so that heavy industries become socialized, and there's a new space for workers, and you try to bring people in. Whoever wants to help can help. And so it's a little bit like there's still the corporateness. You can't get the corporate out of the people, even if you get the people out of the corporate. So you do still have these names for different conglomerates. And even though there's a unified idea, you still have the same problems with techno-utopianism, that like technology can save us and we'll just engineer our way out of this problem. And I think these are very similar positions than, for example, in Citizen Sleeper and Citizen Sleeper 2, you have very similar issues with what is technology actually for, and at what point does it give us possibilities because we can do something and then we can eat and then we can have different relationships, and to some other extent we're also enslaved by the fact that we live in these economized social structures.
Earlier you mentioned solutionism, or the idea of the game being about a solution, imagining a solution and deciding not to go that way. I think you will probably agree with me in that a video game can't single-handedly prevent climate change as much as maybe that would be great if it could. What do you hope Mini Golf and in future projects do accomplish?
Do you have something, Maria?
That they resonate with people is all I can say. I don't think that I personally had something that big in mind, because of course a video game and art in itself can solve anything, but we can raise some awareness and we can make people feel things, and sometimes maybe that's enough.
I do have a little extension on that. I do think, so one of the things that has been very hard for me is to switch from, okay, we got to go on the street, we got to vote for the right parties, we got to demonstrate, there's some radical groups here in Germany that were making sure that planes don't get off the ground. All of these sorts of things were happening, and seeing how politics and the powers that be react to that made me realize that it probably also makes sense for some of us to start thinking about who are we as humans if the climate does change? Who are we giving the power to tell us who we're supposed to be? And I feel like right now, the people that tell us how everything's going to be are very much like tech oligarchies. And I would very much like to create media and counterculture against that opens up a different space for people to think about who they want to be, how they want to be with each other. And I think that is also where the relationships in this game, but also in the other game, or the other games that we want to make, come in, and where we try to figure out, like, how do we want to use technology? How do we want to relate to each other? How are we going to restructure our families and kinships? And maybe there is some space to explore in that world.
Act 2, making fun games about big problems. I don't know if this is what you all intended, but I found this game to be one of the most depressing experiences I've played in a very long time. And not because the story is depressing. The story is not. The story is like itself not. But what it imagines for the future is what you're describing. And it is a future where we have technology powerful enough to try to reconsider the very nature of tectonic plates. And also, we will spend our time playing the same fucking golf game that we've been playing since the Amiga. And that doesn't seem that far off, honestly. And I think that was, even though there is a profound sense of hope in the power of games in the video section, and the story is, I think, quite beautiful and finds a humanity in that, I found it frankly refreshing to get the version of the future that when I played, I'm like, yeah. Yep, that sounds about right. It did accomplish, Maria, what you were saying of, it made me feel a truth that my brain would run away from any other time. And I appreciated it. I will say, in terms of games being silly and complex at the same time, and going back to the Amiga, y'all have made a concept here that is about how silly games can carry really complex ideas in quite literal ways. You find the overarching story here is within the mini golf game. The mini golf game is a container, a means of transferring data that gets at something bigger. I'm curious for you both, does every game to some degree carry complex ideas beneath its surface, or are some games purely frivolous?
I think it depends on the types of games we're thinking about, because there's a really big industry out there.
I think it's very hard to answer the question because from my perspective, I think what you say is true. I grew up in a way where I could own, and not just in the economic sense, but own the game because there weren't that many other games vying for my attention at the same time. And so I would make the game my own because that was the game that I had. The first game I had was called Soul of a Robot. It was on the Schneider CPC 464. It was super brutal to get it to run. It was on a cassette tape. And it was the game that existed. There was no other game to play for months. So, of course, I played this game and made everything that the game could not make. This does not exist anymore. And I also feel like this experience does not exist anymore. And I don't want to say it's an amazing experience and everybody should have it. It's just the experience that I had. And so I grew up with making things your own. And I feel like now I live in a time where people really want to make sure that I don't own anything and everything that I get is just borrowed because I should exchange it for other things very quickly. And I think that is one of the maybe unconscious decisions on why I think mini golf is such a good example. And we stuck with mini golf and we didn't then turn it into lots of mini games, which is also something that might have been floating around. Because it is this one game and you can play it in different ways. And you can imagine that you fly to the moon and then you lift off the snake that ate the elephant 500 times. And then if you don't have anything else to play, maybe that's the thing that you do. And that kind of connects to the whole, maybe if things don't work out really well, then maybe we need this sort of practice again to try and figure out to do with the things that we have and find beauty in the things that we already have.
Earlier I mentioned a book that I can guarantee for a fact that nobody listening to this show has read. I am very confident in that. And yet, at the same time, when I mentioned that book, everyone listening to the show immediately had an assumption of value about it. That book, probably pretty important, sounds really important. That thing, it can serve a function in the world. Games do not get the same benefit of the doubt from institutions. So I'm curious for both of you, what is your experience in the world when you are funding a game or you are going out to institutions and saying, so we've got this thing about mini golf and it's also about climate change. I want you to take us seriously. What are the reactions that you tend to get?
Oh, in Romania, it's very easy. It's not considered an art form. Like pretty plain and simple. And they're like, we do not have culture funds for this.
I think that I can tell a small story about, so we had friends that are in theater and culture and film and everything, literature, whatever. And when I decided to quit my job and then start a video game studio, I think there was a lot of enthusiasm in the beginning, but nobody really wanted to play the game. And a friend of mine told me that when we post on Instagram and we say it's on Steam, we should also tell people that it's not steam.com. Because people don't know. There's still so many people that just don't know what a video game is, that they can play it. I can't tell you how many friends of mine have told me about their children and how if their children are, I'm sure their children would love to play the game. And it's like, dude, but it's also for you. You don't have to give it to your 12-year-old. I'm sure they'll enjoy it as well. But you can be in your 50s and have profound experiences with games. It doesn't have to be our game, but I feel like the disconnect between high culture and low culture in Europe is still very strong, and the way that the video game scene here in Europe is moving seems to indicate that they're more like okay with that, and they just want to go to the entertainment distraction part of it, which I find very sad in a way, because we do have cultural funding, as you've mentioned. And it would be nice to be able to explore things that are super hard to make commercially viable and then give that to other people that are very good at turning that into commercial successes. That would be nice. We're not doing that.
Yeah. Speaking of, I guess, the capitalism of it all, most video games, especially in the United States, operate under the notion that sales equals success. And we're starting to see some indie developers push back against that idea. You both come from the art and the theater and the poetry world, where I think there's a different relationship with success. What is success for 3 more years?
That's a big question. I think that is still to be determined. I think success was to ship a game with people who have, at the same time, while producing the game, also been out on the street to protest almost every day, who have then gone on to do a theater show just a couple of months afterwards, and who are just in general not just doing video games, but also doing a whole plethora of different things. I think that is how I would want video games to exist, as one of the things that people who are artistically inclined do. Just like artists sometimes write books, sometimes they paint pictures, sometimes they do sculpture. It seems like not super weird to tell people that, hey, but I thought you would only be doing this one thing. And I think it would be wonderful if it would be part of a full and rich life to experience, but also make video games. That would be success.
I want to dig into the story just a little before we then move on to this broader conversation about art and theater and everything. But Maria, for me, the story, the structure of Mini Mini Golf Golf is a structure of Ghost of Christmas Past, Ghost of Christmas Present, and Ghost of Christmas Future. Christmas Carol, to me, one of the essential works of progressivism, amongst other things. It underpins, I think, many other great works, like It's a Wonderful Life. I'm curious for you, what was so compelling about that storytelling structure, and what did it allow you to accomplish?
I think it's because, there are all of these things happening in the world and around us, and as we talked about previously, from the wars that are happening. And at the time, Romania was also almost getting a far right-wing president, and that caused a lot of anxiety. And the park thing was very painful as well. And your perception is very fragmented of the world around you, basically. And I feel this game was a way to find a sort of structure for the way in which the psyche works and how it moves between past and present and future and tries to make sense of everything and put it together. And this is what resonated with me as well.
Before we wrap up, where should people go to see your work, and what should they be looking forward to?
So the game is out right now for a while on Steam. It's out for PC, Mac, and Linux, although I hear that you don't need the Linux version anymore because Proton is doing all the heavy lifting nowadays. And we are currently working on the second game called The Permanent Echo. It has no Mini Mini Golf Golf bait and switch built in. It's a pure adventure game, and that will be out early next year.
Fantastic. I love it. Thank you both so much. A Patreon bonus, how to stay optimistic. This, my friends, is where we split Patreon subscribers. I have a lengthy bonus chat here about what it takes to make games like this without succumbing to just total depression and defeat. Both Friedrich and Maria stick around to talk about how theater and games overlap, why people with stability should take risks and experiment, how they stay optimistic, and why it is more and more challenging to stay motivated as you get older. Not a subscriber? No problem at all. We still have closing song coming to you from New York City. So, let's split. That, my friends, is a wrap on the first post-Games Arbor Day special. We did not save the world, but we took a moment from our busy lives to think about our impact. Reminder, you too can feel the dirt under your fingernails by planting a tree or any plant whenever you'd like. It comes with my highest recommendation. Next week, to celebrate the 50th episode of Post Games, I wanted to talk with one of my favorite thinkers in video games, Innie Austin. The immensely talented video essayist uses questions like, what's the oldest building in Grand Theft Auto 5? And I tried to make sense of Cyberpunk 2077's water systems to teach us about the things we often overlook in our own world, like architecture, nature, and public infrastructure. It was such a fun conversation, and I cannot wait to share it with you. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Until then, though, a reminder, post-game supporters get the show and the newsletter early on Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern at the latest. I've been dropping them like first thing in the morning. They get extra acts and bonus materials. This week, Patreon listeners got a bonus conversation with the creators of Mini Mini Golf about how we as artists and audience maintain optimism and hope in this extremely precarious moment for planet Earth. Plus, each month, subscribers get a bonus episode in my ongoing series, Past Games, in which I share deep dive histories into the gaming anniversaries of 2026. The upcoming bonus episode tells the history of Dark Souls. It goes live next Monday. It is fantastic. It has 2 guests, both of whom literally wrote the book on Dark Souls, one of whom has an entire press dedicated to exploring the games of FromSoft. It is a bonus episode, and it rocks. And speaking of bonuses, patrons just got an entire bonus mini episode in which Titanium Quartz designer A.P. Thompson answers questions about the entirety of that game from beginning to end. Its themes, its inspirations, its twists, its turns. And on top of all of that, no ads on anything. Subscribe to the Patreon for, check this, only $5 at patreon.com/postgames. What a deal. Subscribe to the newsletter for free. I guess it's an even better deal at post.games. Post Games logo by James Bareham, theme by Mark Sparling, and a special thank you to this week's guest, Friedrich Kirschner and Maria Cârstian. Post Games interviews are edited for concision and clarity. Like the show, leave a review on Apple or Spotify, or just share the show with a friend. Do any of those, though. It helps so much. Like, for real, it helps so damn much. And that's it. We did it. We managed to put together an episode despite me traveling to New York and giving a lecture at NYU this week. I don't entirely know how we did it, but we did it. To take us out, an original song. I'll see you next week. It is me, last minute edits, Chris Plant, one last time. I realized I did not actually tell you the name of this song, so I want to do that really quick. This is Neptune, and it is by 100 Rabbits. It's for a Playdate game that came out last year called Aquoni, and Aquoni is a textless puzzle game in which you must find your way across an intertwined megastructure, which is to say, sounds totally sick. You should check it out. Hey, other cool thing, the people who made this music also made this game. Okay, now that for real though, that is it. Have a nice week. Enjoy the song.
you.